Welcome into the Blogger Bowl Week 11 recap, Week 12 early lines. Dan's got the Washington shirt on it. Oddly enough, I was on Home Field Apparel earlier looking at the Washington shirts. I already have one, but it's such like a cool color scheme and a cool logo for a lot of them. I like that one. I just have the one with the W and the purple with the gold W and the Husky. I think it's very neat, clean. I like that one too. A lot of good logos there though, and a good week to be wearing them after their performance last weekend in Oregon.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I've always had a soft spot for Washington for some reason. It's the purple and gold.
I
Is
don't know
cool.
why either. It's a good color scheme.
Yeah. And the vibes seem to be pretty good. Pacific Northwest is cool. I did game day at Washington one time, and it was really cool. Enjoyed it there. So I'm big on Washington, and yeah, it was a big win for them, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But man, that was quite the game, and it was quite the departure from the game that we were going to lead off the show with today.
Yeah, it's a little bit of the exact opposite there. So if you want to, if you want to go back, I know if you want to lead off with your Longhorns, you can do that. We can start with Oregon if you want to. So I'll let you drive the show here. Pick your spot because your team was the one in the inaction for the big game last week.
Well, we tend to like to start with whatever the big game of the week is, and the big game of the week was TCU Texas. TCU 17, Texas 10. The final score. And did you watch much of it? Any of it? Were you
had some eyes on it? I was at was at a Friendsgiving on Saturday, so it was kind of like I wasn't sitting down in front of the TV watching it, but it was keeping an eye on it, watching here and there. So no, I did not watch it as closely as you, but kept an eye on it and just oh, it's still 0-0. Oh, yeah. It's still 0-0. Oh, it's still 0-0. Sorry for the overbetters in that one. Not what we expected.
Yeah. Overbetters were not happy with the result there. TCU bettors were. Start with the victors, I guess, in this case. The team with the better coach won the game. And also just a ton of credit here to Joe Gillespie, the defensive coordinator at TCU. He came from Tulsa. You remember when Zaven Collins was at Tulsa and that defense was pretty nasty? Joe Gillespie was a defensive coordinator for that unit, and then he came to TCU with Sonny Dykes. Their defense has not been great this year. It's been fine at times. It's been prone to giving up big plays, but they were just completely locked in, and they were just phenomenal in this game. The defense really just crushed anything Texas wanted to do. They kind of figured out the idea that if you stop the Texas run, Quinn Ewers is not playing super well right now. Texas had 199 yards of offense, their lowest total since the 2015 game at Notre Dame.
I was at that game.
The offensive line was bad. It was the first game they really missed. Well, the next
even down.
Better, I felt personally. Anyway, the offensive line was bad. It was the first game that Junior Angalau, who got hurt before the season started, they really missed him. He was their most experienced leader on that offensive line. They start 2 freshmen and 2 sophomores, and the offensive line's been up and down. I thought they had shown some improvement over the course of the year, but they couldn't run block. And I mean, TCU knew that Quinn Ewers can't throw the ball right now, so they really didn't have to worry too much about the Texas passing game. It's concerning what's happening with the Texas passing game because Quinn Ewers, there's no rhythm whatsoever to anything that Texas is doing. And it's just confusing to me because he looked so good at times, but Xavier Worthy, who's their go-to receiver, they just aren't on the same page at all. And I don't know who's responsible for that. I don't know if Xavier Worthy's checked out. There seems to be all they really try to do is throw deep balls. There's not a lot to the passing attack, and Quinn Ewers hasn't been able to hit any deep balls really since the Oklahoma game. So it's made Texas kind of one-dimensional in that you don't really have to game plan too much for their passing attack. Their receiving core has been really mediocre this year across the board. Outside of that, Jordan Whittington is the only other receiver they have who's really made any plays. They just don't have a third receiver, another guy who can get open. So teams are just going to be able to try to stop the run against Texas, and that's what TCU was able to do. So that was really confusing, and it's a bummer because Pete Kwiatkowski, the defensive coordinator, have been critical of him, but he and Gary Patterson really had Max Duggan in hell in that game. I mean, TCU had a 34% success rate, negative EPA per play. They had 2 explosive plays for their 2 touchdowns, and that was basically the difference in that game. So, yeah, I mean, it was an ugly game for Texas. They played really badly. As far as TCU is concerned, they end the season with Baylor on the road this week. I don't really, we talked about how we like
you don't know what Baylor team you're getting ever. They could lose 31-3, or they could show up and blow you out. You have no idea what team you're going to see from them.
Dave Aranda, we like him as a coach, but they haven't been very good lately.
No,
Then they end the season with Iowa State, which is a really interesting game. I kind of wish this game were in Ames because then it would get really weird. But if Iowa State, I'm going to talk about Matt Campbell later, but the one thing about Iowa State that's been really interesting, or like the one thing about them this year, they can drag anybody into the mud.
they
Like
have
that,
been able to do that. Yeah, a
not
few times.
get the wins once they've dragged the teams down to their level, but everyone they've played, they have dragged down to the mud. So the last game of the season, TCU, maybe something there. You got to think TCU would rather Kansas State lose somewhere along the way and get to face Texas again in the Big 12 championship. I think Kansas State presents them a lot of problems. Will Howard is going to be the quarterback going forward. Adrian Martinez is hurt. So I don't know. It's a great win for TCU. If you want to move them up to number 3 in the playoff ranking this week for beating a ranked team, cool, great, whatever. Do I think they're good enough to beat Georgia or Ohio State? No. Do I think they're good enough to keep it within one score of those teams? Probably not. But, they keep winning, and if they keep winning, they're going to earn their way into the playoff. As far as Texas is concerned, I want to do a little history lesson. In December 2020, Texas boosters pressured Chris Del Conte, the athletic director, to go try to hire Urban Meyer. He did his due diligence. He tried. He made the push. And then Urban Meyer ultimately declined to take that job and then instead committed financial fraud with the Jacksonville Jaguars. But at that point, you can't really keep Tom Herman around. You've publicly gone and tried to hire another coach.
Yeah.
Work. You can't keep Herman. So they end up firing Herman. And Chris Del Conte starts negotiating with another candidate, the guy he wants to be the head coach at Texas. You know the answer to this, so I'm just going to use the royal question as to pose a dramatic question here. Do you know who the coach that Chris Del Conte wanted to hire at Texas was?
Anyone in the comments? Anybody? Anyone of the 3 of you watching live?
The 3 of you watching.
Who knows? Come on, give us something. Nope.
It was Sonny Dykes. According to Sonny Dykes, the deal was all but done. Sources told the Austin American-Statesman. Del Conte denied it, but Dykes confirmed it in a podcast he did. He said he talked about the job with Texas, but instead, this deal falls apart. They hire Sark. Texas Board of Regents President Kevin Eltief said, quote, "To be clear, I was involved in the process from start to finish, and Sark was always at the top of the list. From my perspective, Steve Sarkisian was our guy from the beginning." He then went on to say he'd give Sark an A+ grade so far, and this was prior to the TCU game. So what that sounds like is the athletic director wanted one coach. The boosters were not on board with that, and we're not going to let that happen. And then the president of the Board of Regents stepped in and said, this is who we're going to hire. Now, Kevin Eltief made his money in real estate. He served in the Texas Senate for about 14 years, and then Greg Abbott appointed him president of the Board of Regents at Texas. This is a guy with no athletic background. So this is what happens when you let the boosters and the people outside of the athletic department run the program. Who knows how well, if at all, the Sonny Dykes thing would have worked at Texas, but at a certain point, you have to trust that your athletic director is going to make a good hire. He hired a women's basketball coach who's doing very well. He's hired a softball coach who's doing very well. I'm not a big fan of Chris Beard's style, but to go hire Chris Beard to coach your basketball team makes a lot of sense. I understand it.
Yeah.
He's done a good job. He came to Texas with an impeccable resume from TCU, of all places, of course, ironically enough. But this is what happens. You end up with a coach who seems to be in over his head. It's hard to judge what Sark was before he was at Texas as a head coach because he had those personal demons, which he has since conquered. But it seems like he's a guy who might just be a great coordinator and not a great coach. Sonny Dykes has TCU undefeated in the Big 12 championship game in his first year. We're in year 2 at Texas, and Texas is better. They are a better team this year than they were last year. But has enough progress been made? I don't know. They end with Kansas this week. They play Baylor to end the season. Those are both winnable. Those are both losable. They go to Lawrence. They play Baylor at home. I mean, if you were to say Texas was going to go 8-4 before the season started and one of those losses was going to be to Alabama, I think most people probably would have said, yeah, that seems about right. But it's just, again, it's the way that you're losing games. It's the way you lost the Tech game. It's the way you lost to Oklahoma State, the way you lost to TCU. Just kind of deflating if you're a Texas fan. So
yeah, and
that's kind
it's
of where
become
they
a little bit. It's not like it's a 1 year one-off here. It's been like a little bit of a pattern with this team for the last couple of Stark's second year, right? Like they've had this habit of losing these games kind of late under him. And yeah, the stubbornness play calling. Like I'm looking at the box score here, and I get you had trouble running the football, but when it all comes down to it, Bijan Robinson's the best running back in the country, and he had 12 carries in the ball game. In a game that it's not like you were down 21-3 and you had to start throwing the ball. It was a game that was low scoring, and your defense was playing as well as they were. I get your offensive line might not be run blocking great. You still kind of have to try. You have to keep
Right.
trying until like I said, if you get down 21-7, yeah, okay, we got to start throwing the ball a little bit. But like you're down 7-0, you're down 10-3. Like run the football. Or if it's really not working, find creative ways to get Bijan Robinson the ball out. So I'm looking here. He didn't have a reception. Find ways to work him in the pass game.
Well, they ran one of their go-to pass plays with Bijan Robinson. He was wide open, like nobody was covering him, and Quinn Ewers didn't see him and threw it over the middle of the field, I think, to JT Sanders. So it was there. They tried to, and that one was completely on Quinn Ewers. And that's the thing, like,
more of like extensions of the run game, though. Like if your quarterback's not hitting the deep ball, don't call a deep ball to Bijan. Like hit somebody on a bubble, motion Bijan out and hit him on a swing. Run a little Texas route over the middle with him when you're getting pressured in your face. Like it's the lack of creativity. And you talked about it. I think it was the Oklahoma State game where Texas kind of blew the lead late, where they just didn't try to run the ball. Like they just kept throwing it deep with Quinn Ewers for some reason. And it seems to be a pattern with Sark. And you're in a tough spot because he's bringing in a really good recruiting class, and he's bringing in, the quarterback that everybody's been wanting for the last 7 years or however the hell long it seems like Arch Manning's recruiting's been going on. So you're in a tough spot because you don't want to lose that recruiting class. But like if they go 1-1 to finish out the year here and they're 7-5 and maybe they don't look good in a bowl game, like what does that also do for your recruiting class? And what does it do for you next year? I'm not really sure.
So as far as the Arch Manning thing is concerned, I'm not surprised he committed to Texas. He and Sarkisian have had a good relationship going back to when Sark was at Alabama. And there was always kind of the sense that I heard he wanted to play for Sark. So if that relationship is strong, you also have to remember we're only about a month away. We're only about a month away from early signing day. Yeah. So it's not like you have to wait till February now at this point to get that signing class signed, sealed, and delivered. The recruiting class seems to be hanging on okay. They're very likely going to it seems like they're going to get the number one linebacker recruit in the country as a 5-star who had decommitted from Texas A&M. They appear to be in the driver's seat there. As far as other guys are concerned, I'm not really sure. So the recruiting hasn't been hurt yet. Guys want to play with Arch Manning, and so that's going to create quite the conundrum next year, because it seemed like after the Oklahoma game, like against Alabama, like, cool, Quinn Ewers is the guy. He's going to be there for another year, and then he'll hand it off to Arch Manning after 2023. Oklahoma, he gets hurt. He comes back in the Oklahoma game, plays awesome in that game against a very porous defense. And then suddenly it's like the last few weeks, it's been like, is Arch Manning or is Quinn Ewers the guy? And I'm just like, I don't really know.
Like you going into next year, like after the Alabama game, after the Oklahoma game, like you said, you seemingly had this timeline of the next 7 years or whatever it was, or 5-6 years of Texas quarterbacks, with Ewers handing it over to Manning. And now it's next year. If like he keeps finishing this way, I mean, I don't think he's leaving, but you have a quarterback controversy right away going into camp between the two of them. And also the amount of pressure being put on Quinn, if Quinn Ewers wins that job in camp and he's starting week 1, they play Alabama again early next year, right?
They do.
If they go to Alabama and he looks terrible, like the amount of pressure on him is not good, especially for essentially, I know he's technically a third year in college, but a true sophomore because he reclassified in terms of age. Like it's a lot of pressure for a 19-year-old kid at the University of Texas with, the generational recruit right behind him.
Yeah. They start with Rice, go to Alabama, and then play Wyoming at home in the non-conference next year. Yeah. And it's all, a lot of it's going to come down to two, like the plan was Arch Manning was going to redshirt. I think they were on board with that. I don't know if that's if his idea is to continue to do that, or if like he now realizes there's a chance he might be able to play next year. If that's the plan, of course, you obviously can also play a guy for 4 games, and still redshirt. So he'll get some snaps probably in the first and third games. We'll see what happens against Alabama. I would not be surprised if there's a quick hook though in that Alabama game, and.
At that point, too, if they finish bad this year and Ewers doesn't look good, like when does Sark start coaching for his job and, pull the lever of, all right, we're going to the kid?
That's why, like, if the president of the Board of Regents was the one who made this hire, I think Sark probably has a little bit more rope than a lot of other coaches would.
Fair enough.
Because, like, the athletic director, his job's on the line, too, if the coach that he hires isn't good. And if he doesn't have the autonomy in this case to fire the coach that I don't think he really wanted in the first place, then it kind of seems like, well, that's going to be not his plan. That's not going to be his call to make. So I would assume that Sark's going to have a little bit more rope than a coach might otherwise have in that situation. And honestly, like, if you're Texas, can you really keep doing this over and over and over and over again where you're just replacing your coach every 3 years? Like,
no, it's not sustainable.
Probably not. I think organizationally, I think things are a lot more solid now than they were under Herman. The results on the field aren't quite there right now. Moving on. In the Pac-12, I actually want to talk about 2 Pac-12 games, but mostly want to talk about Washington 37, Oregon 34. What a game. I will say it's a good lesson for anyone in the idea of getting the best number on a bet. I loved the over here. It opened at 69.5, but because we do this on Thursday, I played it at 72.5, and obviously it didn't get there. So that's always the moral of that story is play the best number. And if the number...
That's why we do the show on Tuesdays.
Yeah. Well, I think it was probably still there also. However, That's the point. Come in a little bit under, and there's no way that should have come. Like, it was a weird game, though, in that it never seemed like it was going to come close. The pace was way too slow early. And then in the third quarter, it exploded, and it was basically just trading touchdowns. That might have happened late in the second quarter, too. And then Oregon has a drive, and I've got to bring up the specifics of it because I forgot to write it down in my notes. But they have a drive in this game where it looks like we're going to get there. It looks like the over is gonna just start just cruising. And then Oregon has, so it was 31-27. So you're doing okay. But then Oregon has a 20-play, 91-yard, 10.5-minute field goal drive. The platonic ideal of football in the Big Ten is what Oregon did. But what were your thoughts on what happened in this game?
It's weird. Like, I'm very impressed with Washington, but also very disappointed in Oregon at the same time because you got a 7-point lead at home, and I'm looking at, like, you can't give up 10 points in the last 3 minutes at home when your season is on the line. And I know technically they're still going to be they're still in the race and in the running for the Pac-12 championship, and like they'll probably get there. But like, man, their season, their playoff chances were on the line, and they were, probably not going to get there, but they had an outside chance to get there. And I guess it's just an example of Oregon doing Oregon things. And I guess the more things change, the more they stay the same. Doesn't matter who's the head coach. I still think Dan Lanning's a very good fit there. And if he does stay there for a long time and he doesn't bolt for Auburn after 1 year, I think he'll be a good fit there. And I think he'll get them right. And I think they'll be right up there with USC as the best team in that conference for a long time. But it's just disappointing. It's a disappointing spot. Your offense gives you 34 points at home. Your defense can't finish it out. Also, like, I don't know, 20 plays, 91 yards. I think you got to figure out a way to get that ball into the end zone.
Yeah, and I think that was also the drive where Bo Nix got hurt. So you're dealing with a backup quarterback who you haven't played, and that's a little dicey too.
Good on Washington though. That was
happy for Michael. Yeah,
I am too, because that's a team that, like, after the UCLA game, I don't want to say we wrote them off, but it was like, all right, well, they're really just kind of this fun little Pac-12 team that's going to score some points. No, like, that's a good football team that has had their ups and downs this year, and they didn't really show up on the road at UCLA, but this was their chance to redeem themselves for not showing up on the road against UCLA, and good on them. That was a very, very good win. Michael Penix Jr., fantastic. Like, that was a very, very good win for that Washington team.
Yeah, they really have a good chance to finish 10-2. If they win the Apple Cup, they'll be 10-2 because they're going to beat Colorado on Saturday.
Yeah.
So, like, 10 wins in the first year under Kalen DeBoer is awesome. I kind of want to liken that to a lesser kind of situation. Not necessarily lesser because it's year one for him, but like Kalen DeBoer and Josh Heupel kind of have this thing in my brain of like, if you're a quarterback or a receiver, don't you kind of want to go play in those offenses?
They are going to be able to get not any transfer portal quarterback they want, but I guarantee you after year one, what he did with Michael Penix Jr., who had a good COVID year with Indiana, then got hurt, whatever, wasn't very good at Indiana after that COVID year. And he did this with him in this offense, turning him into not going to be a Heisman Trophy finalist, but a guy who's putting up Heisman Trophy numbers. There's going to be a lot of they're going to be at the top of the list for a lot of transfer portal quarterbacks.
For sure. One other thing that I did want to talk about in this game briefly, and then kind of do an overarching thing.
Sure.
Well, there's been a lot of talk about analytics in this game. So let's set the stage here. There's 1:30 left. It's 34-all. Oregon has a 4th and 1 from their own 34-yard line. Bo Nix was hurt on the previous drive and on the sidelines wanting to come back in. Oregon ran for 312 yards and 6.1 yards per carry. On the play, they hand the ball off to Noah Whittington, who slips, falls down, and they turn the ball over on downs. Washington kicks a field goal. That's your ball game. That said, Oregon did get the ball back with about 50 seconds left and had a chance to drive down and get a chance to win the game. I don't understand like why we have this conversation with analytics over and over and over again when Washington's averaging 9 yards per play in this game and had 2 timeouts. You really think if you punt in that scenario, Dan Lanning,
you're just letting Washington run out the clock and then
you're
probably
Washington drive down and kick a field goal with no time on the clock left.
No, I have no problem. It's not even an analytics thing for me at this point. I know people like bringing that up in all these situations, but like everybody talks about having to have the proper balance between feel for the game and analytics. And like, if you're way too analytical, you're probably going to end up, making bad decisions. And if you're way like on the other side, completely anti-analytics, that's also dumb too. Not wanting all the information presented to you is not smart. But like at some point, you have to find the middle ground, have to meet in the middle. And 4th and 1, when you're running the ball well, you have a great running football team. They don't have a very good defense. They haven't been able to stop your run all night. You run the football and get a yard. Now, if it's 4th and 1 on your own 5, yeah, maybe you punt that ball. But like with how good their offense is, with how good their quarterback is, giving them the ball back in that situation with your lack of a pass defense is just like I want to say a coward's way out, but kind of like that's a little bit cowardly. Like, go run the ball, go get a yard. And you know what? Your running back slipped. Like, that happens. It's going to happen. Like, I have no problem with that. And I would doubt that any Oregon fan had any problem with going for it there.
By the way, if you go back and look, like I think if he doesn't slip, he might have scored a touchdown on that play, honestly. So that's the way that ended. Man, I got to bring up
great uniform game too.
Great uniform game,
fantastic. I think I said that in the group chat with you, me, and Phil.
One of the things though that we kind of talked about, I've talked about a lot with the Pac-12 this year, is I just never really felt like any of those defenses were good enough for anyone in that league to win out, or at least the 3 1-loss teams. We saw it with Oregon, could not generate stops. We saw it with UCLA. They allowed Arizona a 54% success rate, 9.75 yards per drop back, and allowed points on the last 2 major drives. That is a brutal loss for Chip Kelly. However, I did say a month ago on this show that they would beat Utah, they would beat USC, and they would lose to one of the Arizona schools. 2 of those 3 legs have come true. We will find out on Saturday night if I have completely nailed that prediction. I might be betting UCLA in that game if they remain an underdog. I might just sprinkle some money line because it's a fucking toss-up. Like,
it doesn't really matter, but where is the game? Is the game at the Rose Bowl?
It's at the Rose Bowl.
Okay, not that it totally matters. Yeah, that's going to be an interesting one, especially with Travis Dye going out for USC. And he's not, it looked very bad. I don't think we're seeing him anytime soon. That's going to be.
Riley said the expectation was that his season.
Yeah, I think he said it's very likely we don't see him for the rest of the year, something like that. Basically saying, and we'll confirm that he tore an ACL. But I don't know. That very well could have been a little bit of a look ahead spot for Chip Kelly and UCLA, and that's not excusing it. That's probably what happened there, and probably the coaching staff a little bit guilty of it too. That Arizona offense we've seen all year is dangerous and can score on anybody, and they just kind of walked through it and got beat. But man, that's going to be a fun matchup with USC. And if USC's down one of their best playmakers on offense, that's another. If UCLA is the underdog, I think I kind of leaning towards them.
Yeah, if I can get plus money on either side in this game to win outright, I'm probably going to
think that's a smart play.
If it flips somehow and UCLA ends up in the favorite and USC is plus money, like, give me the Trojans. Like, that's fine.
I think that whatever the plus money line is the right bet.
Is the way to play that one. All right. 2 more. I honestly didn't watch a ton of this. I had it on a third screen, didn't see a lot of it. UNC 36, Wake Forest 34. Drake May, very good. Only 3 points in the 4th quarter. What the fuck? Like, you bet the over, right?
I did bet the over, and it was a bad beat, but at the same time, like, it was still such a fun game.
Yeah, like, well, the thing is like, so the Oregon one was like this the entire night. The UNC game, the live total was 86.5 at halftime. Like, you were the right side there. What did you take away? Again, like, Drake May is awesome. Both of these offenses are very good. Like, that's North Carolina for being able to get some stops when they needed them to.
Yeah, that was an interesting spot for North Carolina because I truly was not certain that they would be able to make a stop, make Wake Forest punt, or turn the ball over at any point. And when they had to do it, they did. Now that obviously they still let up, it was 37-34. No, what was the final on that one?
36-34.
36-34. Okay.
There were more points scored in the Washington-Oregon game. I didn't realize that till just now.
That's wild.
One
I mean, they made the stops when they had to, and that was a moment for me. Now I didn't think North Carolina could beat Clemson because I thought that Clemson's defense would just be good enough and their offense would just take advantage of a bad defense. Carolina's defense stepping up enough on the road in a tough spot at night against a better quarterback than they're going to face when they play Clemson in the ACC championship game. Like, I kind of, for the first time, buy that North Carolina can beat Clemson. That's kind of my biggest takeaway from that, because I expected them to play well, put up some points, and then lose like 45-35 or something like that, and just kind of not have enough firepower at the end, and Wake Forest kind of pulls away because they win at home. That's the first time that I look at that North Carolina team and think they can actually beat Clemson.
I mean, can they beat them? Sure. Do I think they're going to do it? No. I
don't think I wouldn't bet on it, but like I was writing them off completely pretty much in that ACC championship game. And now I'm like, all right, like I kind of want to watch this one because North Carolina, I mean, we've known it, but like even more so proved it. They have a dude at quarterback who can make throws. And we saw the last time Clemson played a team that had a dude at quarterback in Wake Forest, he put up almost 50 on him in a loss, but put up almost 50 on him. Like I'm very intrigued by this ACC championship game all of a sudden.
I'm going to throw something out there, and I know NC State had a really bad loss on Saturday. I still wouldn't rule out NC State being able to beat North Carolina.
I can see it.
If the defensive improvement is not completely there, if this was a one-off, I guess is the point. Mm-hmm. The last one on the list, Alabama 30, Ole Miss 24. I want to talk about Lane Kiffin in a second, but my overarching thought on this game. Remember when Ole Miss played Kentucky and we were like, yeah, these teams are fine, but do we really see them competing with Georgia? No. And then we realized that Kentucky wasn't any good. Mm-hmm. That's kind of I had a little bit of redux here with that game. Like, these teams are fine. These teams are okay. Alabama ran for 3 yards per carry. There's something really weird with Jahmyr Gibbs. Because after the game, Saban said he tweaked his ankle, but like during the game, the staff was telling Jenny Dell for CBS that he was okay to come back, and he never played in the second half. Mm-hmm. So that was weird. They didn't run the ball very successfully in terms of yardage, but like they ran the ball well enough to keep the offense moving. They did enough to help out Bryce Young in this game. We've said all year, if you can neutralize the Alabama front, the secondary is gettable, but the defensive line for Alabama finally played a game where I was like, okay, these guys are just going to dominate this game. And Lane didn't trust that his guys could pass block. So, I mean, Alabama, congratulations, you win 30-24, but they were drawing dead coming into this game because LSU winning meant that Alabama was out of the SEC championship race. So, I don't know. I'm still like, if you were to tell me Alabama was going to beat anybody outside of the top 3 or 4 teams in the country, I'd be like, sure. If you tell me Alabama was going to lose to those teams, sure. Ole Miss, not really certain.
My biggest takeaway, and I wasn't looking, I was pulling up the drive chart here because I wanted to get the exact play-by-play. Mm-hmm. 2nd and 7 at the Alabama 28. Quinshaw Judkins runs for 14 yards, the Alabama 14 for a first down. Mm-hmm. So you got 2:23 left. You're down 6 points. You got 1st and 10 at the Alabama 14. Your star running back, Quinshaw Judkins, having a very good day. He's been your best player all season. And your play chart goes 1st and 10, Jackson Dart. Wait, no, I'm looking at the wrong one here. But Jackson Dart, incomplete pass. 2nd and 10, Jackson Dart, run for no gain. 3rd and 10, Jackson Dart sacked. 4th and 16, Jackson Dart incomplete. I get maybe 3rd and 10, you have to throw the ball. How in the hell on 1st and 2nd down does your best player not get a carry, not get the ball in his hands? That's a misstep in coaching. Like that, it's overthinking yourself, and I feel like that's kind of been Lane's Achilles heel at times. Is sometimes he gets a little bit too cute, and sometimes he outthinks himself, and that's. Talk about, having a feel for the game versus the analytics. I'm not saying the analytics told him not to give the ball to Quinshaw Judkins, but sometimes in football, the answer is the most obvious thing right in front of you, and you win or lose that game with your star running back. That's just kind of my takeaway.
I don't remember it now. I feel like that first down play wasn't even supposed to be a pass. I think it was like there was something to it. I don't think it was a traditional pass. I don't mind throwing the ball in that situation. Mm-hmm. But they just he didn't trust his guys at all. Like the draw on 2nd down was a horrific. Mm-hmm. Or the QB draw.
Yeah. If you're gonna run a draw, run it with your star, run it with your running back.
Or just give it to the running back and let him do the thing.
Yeah,
that's gonna shift to my I'm just gonna shift to my segment I call coaches, man. So
Hmm.
after the game, Lane rants about how he was like, asked about the performance of the team. He said he doesn't care about the stats. He just rants about how they didn't win the game. That's all that matters, which is fine and dandy. But they had a chance to win the game, and we talked about how his play calling was suspect. Then he tweets, he like quote tweets the clip from his press conference and says, "Ole Miss FB. Hopefully, we are on the same page now." Like, man, I don't think being way too online is good for a head coach in college football. Like it's
No,
just
not
like he's
really.
a guy who is just wants to mix it up and wants to like, and it's great for us because we think it's
Hmm.
funny. But if you're trying to win, like just take a step away from Twitter for a second and stop doing all like stop that kind of stuff. Like he's a very smart coach. He very clearly understands offensive football. I wonder if it's still like an immaturity thing with him or not. We talked about it on Tuesday. He's been lapped by Josh Heupel in his second year. He's been lapped by Brian Kelly, who's playing for the SEC title in year one. And it doesn't really matter because apparently Auburn's going to give him $100 million to go deal with that dumpster fire.
Yeah, it's he's like you said, he's entertaining to watch, but at some point you got to know you got to know when to pick your spots with being the entertaining, quirky, fun, whatever guy, and that was probably not the spot to do it. I do think he's probably going to end up at Auburn because I think they're going to throw him a bunch of money. But yeah, I mean, what it came down to was just how do you not get the ball to your best player, the one who would rush for 20 or 135 yards till up until that point, and just had a 14-yard carry to take you to the 14, doesn't touch the ball once in 4 downs. I don't understand it.
I don't either. All right. So then I'm just going to run through a bunch of coaches and interrupt me if you want to talk
Sure.
about these guys.
No.
Matt Campbell, another loss in a game that was in which his team was between a 3.5 point favorite and a 3.5 point dog. Yes, they were on the road, but Oklahoma State has been dead on arrival since the Texas game, and he once again found a way to lose a close game. The poster child for striking while the iron is hot and taking a bigger job. I just don't know if I'm a bigger program if Matt Campbell's a guy I'm as high on as I
Not
was
anymore.
this time 2 years ago. Brent Venables, there's a lot of work to do at Oklahoma. It's impossible to tell if he's the guy for the job. They don't have the personnel to play defense the way he wants to, but he's been stubborn. And part of the reason that they've struggled is because it's a square peg round hole kind of thing with their defense. Bedlam this week at Tech to close the season. I think they have to win one of those two games. So not a
Why is
guarantee.
Bedlam this week?
It's been that way. Like they haven't. I guess the idea is they've wanted to separate that game in case those two teams
Oh,
are
in
in
case the Big
Big
12
12 title
championship.
contention. I guess I don't know. But Bedlam's this week. Tech in Lubbock the week after. Man, a bowl game is not guaranteed for them. Mark Stoops. John Calipari was certainly being an asshole when he said that they're a basketball school, even if he's not wrong. But Stoops clapped back on Twitter. He's getting $6.75 million this year, and that's going to go up to $8 million by the end of the contract. And you just lost at home to Vanderbilt in a game where your top 10 pick at quarterback was 11 for 23 for 109 yards and an interception.
He's
Like,
not good.
we know that Will Levis is not good, but man, Mark Stoops.
That's tough.
That's
tough.
a great job if you're winning 8 games at Kentucky and you're getting paid like $3-4 million. But if you're going to be getting paid $8 million in a couple of years and you're losing to Vanderbilt at home,
That's
oof.
not good. Who does Kentucky finish out the year with? Do you have their schedule in front of
They
you by
have
chance?
Georgia and Louisville, so they're going to lose on Saturday, and then like that Louisville game is pretty good.
My under, I think it was under 6.5, or maybe it was even 7.5. It might have been under 7. I remember I did the preseason series, and I think I had their under. I don't remember if it was 6.5 or 7.5, but either way, not dead yet.
Not dead yet. You would definitely need them to lose to the. You need Scott.
Yeah, it's going to come down to
and
Louisville.
I think Cunningham might have gotten hurt on Saturday. I was texting with Felica, and he said he had Louisville on his Bears board this week, and he said I think I might have gotten Malik Cunningham killed, and I never did a follow up on that. Dana Holgerson. Houston won, but they needed a last-minute comeback against 3-7 Temple. EJ Warner, of course, the son of Kurt, threw for 486 on them. They're 6-4 with ECU and Tulsa to close, so 8-4 still very possible. But they've been exceptionally topsy-turvy this year. They've only played 2 normal games. Both were against bad teams. Every other game has been very weird or come down to the final play. I guess the question is this a program that needs some normalcy as they move up in weight class to the Big 12 next year? Like, I know he coached West Virginia in the Big 12, but like, being kind of like the outlaw program, outlaw coach thing kind of works at Houston when you're in the American, but it's just been they're the most fascinating mid-major team in college football this year because nothing's been normal.
Yeah, I'm weird. Not weird. Surprised at his lack of success so far there because I thought I mean, really is at the time a step down from West Virginia to go to Houston. Obviously, took a bunch of money to do it, and West Virginia wasn't going to pay him. But like, I don't know. It hasn't seemed to work out there. But I think going into the Big 12, you probably have to take him with you. And if it doesn't work out there in year one, then you probably pull the plug. But I think as a guy who knows the conference, who's been there, who's had some decent success there, I think you do have to roll with him for one more year at least, taking you into the conference.
The last guy on my list, Jim Leonhard. Not sure if losing to Iowa, the way they lost to Iowa, hurts his chances of getting the job. But if he gets the job, he needs to hire an offensive coordinator that's going to remake the offense into something that resembles modern football. They don't need to become Josh Heupel and score 1 million points. But getting rid of divisions in the Big Ten is going to make life a lot tougher for some coaches in that league, mainly all of the coaches that are in the West. Also, congratulations to Iowa for probably winning the West. Yuck. This is from Bill Connolly. Lowest yards per play in a win of 14-plus points since 2007. Iowa's 2.15 yards per play were the third fewest yards per play in a 14-plus point win in the last 15 years in college football. Three of the 6 on his list involved Will Muschamp coached Florida teams. So simultaneously,
Good
the most
company.
Iowa and most Will Muschamp stat of all time, which means there's only one man for the job when Kirk Ferentz hangs it up.
Will Muschamp to Iowa. You heard it here first on the Blogger Bowl. He's getting another chance there.
The Blogger Bowl. Anything else that you want to add from the week that was in college football? Shout out to your dude for Notre Dame who had the catch of the year.
That was Braden Lindsey. That was amazing. Yeah. What a catch!
Was unreal.
That was a game I watched the first half of, and then got on the road to my friend's game. It was left at halftime. I was like, oh, cool. 35-16, like cruising, great. Offense looks great. Good on Drew Pine, playing really well against the bad defense. And then the second half happened, and that was apparently a thing. But whatever. Notre Dame got the win. The games like those happen, and
an ugly win is still a win.
It seemed like what tends to happen with Tommy Rees calling plays at some points. He gets bored sometimes when the things that working just keep working and wants to try something new, and sometimes that doesn't necessarily work out. But that's not the best way to call offensive plays, but that's fine. He's done a nice job this year. So good win. The over 8.5 still alive for the Irish. It's going to come down to USC.
I cannot believe I almost forgot to shout out the local kids, the UConn Huskies.
They're bowling.
All sincerity, Jim Moore Jr. got that team to a bowl game in year one is damn near miraculous. I almost broke my home field apparel trend for the first time this season and wore a UConn shirt because I have the sad Husky home field apparel shirt. It's too small and I have no idea where it was. So I almost wore I have like a UConn women's basketball polo shirt that I bought at like Marshall's for like $12 a long time ago. Almost wore it today. But I thought I'd shout out Washington as well. But like in all sincerity, that is an awesome achievement
out Huskies
for that program. And in the Army game, we talked about it a couple weeks ago, last week. The Army game's winnable, man.
They can win that game.
They could win that game, get to 7-5. Like, can you imagine them getting that win, playing a bowl game against some team that just does not give a shit about being there? Although Brett McMurphy had them mocked to the whichever they call it, the Motor City Bowl now. I don't know if it's still a Motor City Bowl or not. On the road against a MAC team in Detroit might be a little.
That would be so fun. That'd be fun. I would love that. Give me that matchup. Give me them against Ohio in the Motor City Bowl. I'm all in. All in.
That would be Matt's platonic ideal is Ohio football, apparently. All right, so here we go.
On Tuesday nights, yes.
20 games on the list, although 5 of them are midweek action. Tonight, we have Bowling Green at Toledo. Toledo opened 15.5. It's now 16.5. Ohio visits Ball State. Open 3.5, still 3.5. Today on Brown Bag Bets, you gave out Bowling Green, you gave out Ohio, and you gave out the over in both games. You love Curtis Rourke and you like underdogs otherwise, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm underdogs and overs in action, except when it comes to Ohio and Curtis Rourke in these shorter spreads. I know it's a little bit higher with 3.5 than we did last week, but Curtis Rourke's been the best quarterback in the MAC. He takes care of the football, 24 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. That Ohio defense is a little bit suspect at times, but I think if you get into a shootout, I trust the better quarterback. So give me the Bobcats there. And then, we're sticking to the system, underdogs and overs.
A lot of the lines this week have not really moved a ton. So tomorrow we have 3 action games. Eastern Michigan at Kent State. Kent State's favored by 7.5. Miami of Ohio at Northern Illinois. That is a Northern Illinois minus 1.5. And then Western Michigan, Central Michigan, a battle for directional Michigan, although we've talked about the Central is not a direction. We talk about Michigan MAC Michigan superiority. This one's weird. Central Michigan opened 4.5. It's out to 10.5. I wonder if that was just a bad line or if there was an injury or something that people were.
There probably has to be some sort of injury, but like Central Michigan's looked pretty decent in the two action games, and Western Michigan has not looked decent at all. They put up they lost like 13-9 at Bowling Green a couple weeks ago, and then Bowling Green goes out and loses 40-6 at home to Buffalo. I forgot who they played last week. Not a good look for them. That's a very weird line, and that's going to test my underdogs, but I'm going to have to go with them even at 10.5. There has to be some sort of injury there.
Have you been? How many of the directional or non-directional Michigan Max campuses have you visited?
And just the Michigans.
Just what?
Did you say just the Michigans or any of them?
The Michigan one? Because I know.
Oh, I have not been to any of the Michigans. No, that's 5 hours away. And that's 5 hours away. I wasn't going to go watch Reed play baseball.
No, I was going to ask which town was the best, but you don't know.
So, I've been to DeKalb. I've been to Northern Illinois. DeKalb is. You don't really need to go to DeKalb unless you really want to see a Tuesday night action game.
All right. So moving on, Thursday night football, an interesting AAC game. SMU visiting Tulane. Cinderella. It struck midnight for them. Central Florida would just move the ball all over them. They couldn't get stops. It opened 4.5. Tulane down to a 3-point favorite. They still control their destiny in terms of getting to the AAC title game, I think. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, because I think they only have one conference loss. But that was a pretty devastating loss. I don't know if you have any thoughts there.
Not really. I'm just interested to see how they bounce back against an SMU team that can clearly score and has a pretty good quarterback. So that's going to be a fun one to turn on and have on alongside the NFL game on Thursday night.
So moving on to Saturday, we start in the Big House, Michigan, and it opened 18.5 down to a 17.5 point favorite over Illinois. Speaking of teams who had a really wretched week, Illinois. Sorry, Phil. I watched way too much of that game and came away really unimpressed with them. They got out rushed by Purdue. Like Purdue ran the ball better.
It's tough at home.
At home, not great. And then I was critical of Aiden O'Connell at times. Thought he'd struggled through a good chunk of the season. Played much better against Illinois, and like that was kind of the thing. You run the ball well. You have the much better quarterback. That's kind of what happened. I felt there.
I'm interested in see if Illinois' defense, which has been pretty good all year, and I know they didn't show up quite as much as they wanted to against Purdue, can contain Michigan's running game at all and make J.J. McCarthy have to, make some throws to win a football game. Because I think that's kind of the last test that Michigan is waiting to pass. And it's nothing that J.J. McCarthy hasn't done. It's just that he hasn't had to do that yet. So I'm interested to see if Illinois can do that. But, I kind of have my doubts here.
Yeah, I don't.
It's tough. I kind of expect this to maybe be like 13-3 at half, and Illinois is maybe fighting tough and running the ball a little bit, and then you blink in the third quarter and it's 27-3 and the game's kind of over.
Yeah, it just seems hard to me to think that Illinois kind of wants to be Michigan, and they just don't have the athletes to be Michigan.
Yeah.
TCU, they play another noon game on the road at Baylor, open 2.5, still 2.5. Maybe Baylor bound. Like this could be one of those because of football. TCU coming off of a big win, Baylor coming off of a bad loss, noon or 11 a.m. kick. But I don't know. I just feels like Baylor TCU kind of has a team of destiny thing going on right now, and Baylor's kind of got some issues.
Yeah, I'd probably lean towards TCU, but the fact that it's only a 2-point spread is intriguing and shows you what Baylor's capable of doing because we've seen this program kind of do it a few times under Dave Aranda after when they're counted out, kind of come back, have a good effort. But that'll be an interesting one to watch. I lean TCU though.
The Pac-12 undercard game that really should be the Pac-12 After Dark game. I really wish it was, but it's not. Washington State at Arizona. It's the Jaden DeLauro revenge game. I cannot wait for this game. This might be my under-the-radar game this week if it's not Montana State. He's already started talking shit. Nick Rolovich, that asshole former Washington State coach, he got on Twitter talking about it. Basically, Jaden DeLauro liked the coaching staff at Washington State, wasn't super thrilled that they fired Nick Rolovich for being an idiot, and he came in to defend him. But whatever. Just a fascinating, just going to be kind of a really fun game. Opened a
lot of offense in that
4.5.
That would be perfect. What's the total?
Stand by. The total on
it's got to be somewhere near 70, right?
Yeah, I'd imagine it is. I don't have it in front of me. It wasn't even. I had to go to DraftKings to get that line. It wasn't even up on. It wasn't even up.
Whatever. Yet. Put the over on my card.
All right, put the over on your card. While we do that, give me your best 20 seconds on why Notre Dame is going to cover 20.5 against Boston College.
Oh boy, it seems like Phil Jerkovic. How do we pronounce it? Jerkovic,
Djokovic.
whatever. Jerkovic doesn't seem like he's going to play, and if he does, he's going to be severely banged up. And I think Notre Dame's just going to be able to run the football. They haven't played fantastic at home this season outside of the Clemson game, but the last few weeks they've really found their run game. Then Navy sold out to stop the run. They showed they can beat you in the past a little bit with Drew Pine, at least. Receivers have come on as of late. Defense is getting a little healthier. And Boston College, man, they're just not very good. So I think Notre Dame's going to be able to run the football quite a bit. And I think that I'm not sure I'd take the 20.5 points because that offense is capable of absolutely dominating a game and winning 27-10. But I think they will just kind of control the football for 40 of the 60 minutes.
The total in the Arizona game is 63. The thing I'll caution you on is, if I'm not mistaken, I think Washington State plays one of the slowest tempos in college football. So
still want the over.
You still want the over? That's great. I think that's why that total.
I do appreciate you giving me that heads up, but I have to take it.
A couple of playoff teams on the road, a couple of at least teams right now, playoff teams on the road. Georgia at Kentucky. Georgia's a 22.5 point favorite. Ohio State at Maryland is a 27.5 point favorite. If you were to pick one of those two road playoff team favorites, Georgia minus 22, Ohio State minus 27.5, if you had to, which one are you taking?
I think I'm taking Ohio State. Georgia has played with their food a little bit at times this year on the road, but they've played with their food a little bit a few times this year on the road. And Ohio State's offense really, we needed to see them absolutely demolish a team like Indiana last week, and we did. Maryland's coming off getting shut out. I think Maryland's kind of circling the drain a little bit, and I think Ohio State is picking up steam. They want to be full speed ahead for Michigan. I like them too. I would pick them with minus 27.5 over Georgia minus 22.5.
I think the weather's supposed to be bad. I don't think that like snowy, but I think it's supposed to be cold in Kentucky this weekend too, and like it just seems like a weird spot there. And I need to correct, I was wrong. Washington State 34th in plays per minute, or tied for 34th in plays per minute, and Washington, I'm looking at the wrong, and Arizona tied for 38th. So maybe the over is a look there. Not super efficient offenses. Anyway, Miami at Clemson, 19.5 point favorite. Clemson. You're already over Clemson. All right.
Miami.
This one, man, I just like, they're suckering me into fading my alma mater again. But Texas is a 9.5 point favorite on the road in Lawrence. And it's just like, Texas is 5-4 as a favorite this year, but 3 of the wins were against UTSA, Louisiana Monroe, and Oklahoma when Oklahoma didn't have a quarterback. So it's like, Texas hasn't done a good job of covering, and they covered the Kansas State game, which they tried to give away. Like, maybe Texas bounces back, but they haven't shown a lot of that over like the last couple of years. I feel like this is the fact that their Big 12 championship hopes are still alive help them in this situation. But I still feel like, even though they lost to Kansas last year, they just don't respond well to like that kind of stuff. So
yeah, it seems like they kind of haven't, but like Kansas isn't really playing for anything anymore. Like,
they did it.
They did it.
Paris, Texas again.
Fair, but like they did it. They made their bowl, and I don't know. I feel with Texas playing for something. I don't know.
I think a better coached team at home getting.
That's also true. Better coached team at home. That's fair.
I'm sorry, I need to take your turn. The next one, don't care about the side. It is Minnesota minus 2.5, but Iowa at Minnesota. Have you seen the total?
It's like 33.5 or something.
32.5.
Oh.
Are you going to sack up and take the under?
I don't know, because Iowa's offense has like actually scored a few points lately, and like Minnesota. I mean, is their offense relatively healthy? Is Ibrahim playing?
I honestly, I have no idea. If I'm being completely.
They have a decent tandem of running backs. I don't know.
So one of the podcasts I listened to about college football, they were talking about it, and a couple of their guys took the over in the Wisconsin-Iowa game. They're like, look, man, it's just going to be 20-17. Like, it was 35.5 as total.
Yeah.
It's just going to be 20-17. That's not even a lot of scoring. And watching that, I watched way too much of that game too. At least that was on a second screen. And it was like, man, that game really, it did not end up going over, and it really should have. Like, that's how kind of inept some of these offenses can be, and there were turnovers and blah, 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 blah. I'm not taking it there. I'm not touching 32.5. A fascinating game to me. Shout out to the Auburn Tigers and Coach Cadillac Williams. Got that win over A&M for the card. We
Coach Cadillac.
They're hosting Western Kentucky this week. Auburn's a 5.5-point favorite. I don't know that I want to touch it because even though Auburn's a mess, like the talent discrepancy is still pretty high there.
Mm-hmm.
But that is just not an enviable game to have to play. This isn't like Alabama's playing Austin P and Auburn is playing fucking Western Kentucky. Like, what are we doing, guys? Why do we schedule that one?
Yeah, that's a weird schedule spot. I'm not sure exactly when they scheduled it, but still, like Western Kentucky's always been a frisky team that can score a lot of points.
Yeah,
That's a weird one.
It's actually the two teams who I bet and won with last week. Shout out to the Hilltoppers. Tennessee at South Carolina, open 20.5. It's 21.5. Tennessee covers here.
I do. South Carolina. Is it? Wait, where is it? Where are they playing?
It's in Columbia. It's in South Carolina.
Okay, I still lean Tennessee. I probably would not take it right now and hold out hope that maybe it drops a little bit or buy a hook there. But South Carolina seems to be kind of struggling a little bit here. It seems like they hit their peak and they're kind of on the way down now. And Tennessee, I think we saw last week. Mizzou is a frisky team. Mizzou, they have been all year. And they kept that game kind of interesting going into the third quarter, and then Tennessee put their foot on the gas. I think that's a team that knows that they don't want to leave any doubt with the playoff committee after that Georgia game. I think they want to win every game by as many points as we can. That's why we saw Josh Heupel score a touchdown late in the meaningless game. Like, they want to put up as many style points as possible. And I think that's another opportunity for them. I like where South Carolina's program's headed under Shane Beamer, but I think this is a Tennessee out for blood kind of matchup.
Bedlam, we talked about it. I, for the life of me, cannot figure out why Oklahoma opened -5.5 and it's out to 7.5. I know Oklahoma State has quarterback issues, but
still, Oklahoma State.
Oklahoma's kind of a mess.
That game, Oklahoma State doesn't always win that. Obviously, they don't always win that game.
They seldom ever win.
But what I'm saying, the last few years, they've kept that game pretty close. It seems like.
To verify.
No, wait, it is at Oklahoma though, and they haven't done it. They haven't kept it close there. I feel like they've kept it close at home.
Let's see. 2 years ago in Norman, it was 41-13. The last time before that, it was 48-47. The time before that, it was 38-20, and then the time before that. So yeah, I mean, it's been mostly close in Norman. However, I think we might have done this before on this show. Maybe not. These teams have played 116 times. Can you guess how many times Oklahoma has won Bedlam?
Well, Oklahoma's won it like 90-something times, right?
They've won Bedlam 90 times.
Yeah.
90, 19, and 7. They kind of bucked the trend last year, but they did. I mean, maybe they just won it again. But
yeah, they bucked the trend, and then Lincoln Riley left the next day.
Right. Again, like, if you're betting Oklahoma State here, again, they don't have to win. I just think 7.5 is a lot for an Oklahoma team.
It is. I would probably take Oklahoma State getting the points.
And then our two big Pac-12 games, USC at UCLA open, USC -2.5 is now 1.5. Like I said earlier, on Thursday, I'm probably going to see where this line is, and if I can still get a plus money line on one of the teams in this game, I would take it.
Yeah, I think that's the way to go about it. Whichever team is a plus. I mean, if you like UCLA, grab them right now, and if you would rather wait and see if USC pops up, go ahead. That's fine. But I think whatever team on Thursday or Friday is plus money on the money line, that's when you take.
All right, well, we're gonna do a new game on the show called Dan. It's gonna be tremendous content. It's gonna be Dan Price Shops. UCLA money line. All right, so and I'm going to go to the bets. But if you go to BetSperts and you go to our app, you can just compare.
Got them all right there for you. It's fantastic.
Right, DraftKings, they're plus 105. FanDuel plus 105. Is it a flat 105 everywhere? Looks right now like it's going to be. You can get them at plus 110 at PointsBet if you're in a PointsBet.
Get the PointsBet.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to be.
Going to put the link in this. I'm going to put the link in the bio here to sign up at PointsBet with us. Grab the plus 110 now.
Grab that plus 110. And then the last one, we'll talk about this game in depth on Thursday. Utah at Oregon, opened 3, Oregon -3, still Oregon -3. Really interesting game. Utah been just completely under the radar since that USC game, just kind of doing their thing. Oregon's been very talked about, very public, so on and so forth. These two teams played twice last year, and Utah just utterly demolished Oregon both times they've played, but that was a totally different scenario, totally different teams, totally different coaching staffs. You have to think playing this – I think they played in Salt Lake City and then played in Vegas. Yeah. So they did not play in Oregon last year. That might change things a little bit here or there, but it's going to be another interesting one, and I am going to do my best to stay up for 10:30 p.m. or 10 o'clock p.m. start time here on the East Coast. Can't guarantee I'm going to make it, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, interested to see how Oregon responds because I know their playoff hopes are officially dead after that, but like still in the driver's seat, still control your destiny for a Pac-12 title. So interested to see how they respond to Utah kicking their ass twice last year, and then you got a Utah team that's playing their best football, just kind of very silently going about their business. So that should be a really fun game. That is unfortunately the after dark game.
I'm pretty sure Oregon is in if they went out. Go Google and try to find the Pac-12 scenarios are a fucking nightmare if UCLA wins. If UCLA beats USC, it becomes kind of crazy. I mean, obviously, if USC wins and Utah wins, then we're pretty set at that
Yeah.
point. Like if USC wins, they're in because their last game is a non-conference game where they're going to lose to Notre Dame. So yeah, just going to be a fascinating one to watch. But man, that's all I got. You got anything else you want to add?
No, not that I can think of off the top of my head. I saw game days going to the Montana Bowl.
Brawl of the Wild.
That's
I'll
gonna
talk
be.
about it.
I,
I'll talk
that's
about
gonna
it.
be.
Maybe I'll do 2 under the radar games.
I love when game day goes to places like that.
Oh, it's going to be awesome because I don't know, like just Google pictures of Bozeman, Montana, and just like their football stadium and where it's all situated, and it's like, okay, I'll do it now, and I'll do the Wazoo game as my under the radar game. Like, this is the Iron Bowl at the FCS level, a state where there is no professional sports, and they are further from professional sports than Alabama. Like, you're only a couple hours from Atlanta if you're at Auburn. Like, you're not that far. Man, there is nothing but the Cats and the Grizz out there, and those fan bases do not like each other. It is a contentious game every year. And Montana State has one of my favorite players in FCS, touchdown Tommy Millot. He hates being called touchdown Tommy, but he's touchdown Tommy Millot. He was a true freshman, took over for them at quarterback last year, guided them to the national title game where they got utterly demolished. But I think he got hurt in that game, but I don't think it mattered. It wouldn't have mattered. North Dakota State just crushed him. But a touchdown Tommy, it's going to be awesome. There's no snow, unfortunately, in the forecast.
That's too bad.
Yeah, no snow. And the last thing, we'll talk about it more on, and this is the last thing before we go. We will talk about it on Thursday. Maybe a snow bowl in Buffalo
3 to 4
Saturday
feet.
and Sunday, because the Bills have a home game on Sunday. The Bulls play Akron, and they're expecting 2 to 4 feet of snow between Thursday and Sunday in Buffalo.
Let's go.
Man, let's go. The total in that game has dropped 5 points and is probably still dropping. I haven't checked in the last hour or two, but man. So we have that. We have
only way that game would be better if it was a Tuesday night snow bowl, but I'll take a Saturday.
For sure. So we'll have that. We'll talk about the Pac-12 games on Saturday. We'll figure out what the rest of our slate is going to look like. But that's going to do it for us. For Matt, I am Dan, and we will talk to you on Thursday.